I just need a minute, please. I remember begging her, my mascara streaking down my cheeks. My hands were still shaking from throwing dirt onto my father's casket 4 hours earlier. A minute doesn't sign clients, Thea. Grief doesn't pay the bills. Vivienne didn't even look up from her monitor. Get back to your desk or find another job. I'm not running a charity here. I stood in her office doorway, the ache in my chest so physical I could barely breathe. The funeral program was still folded in my purse. Dad's favorite photo of us fishing at the lake when I was 9 stared out from the cover, his laugh lines crinkling around his eyes the way they never would again. I haven't slept in 3 days, I whispered. Vivienne finally looked up, her perfectly lined eyes narrowing. Neither have I. Finishing the presentation you were supposed to complete before your situation. The Arcadian group meeting is tomorrow. $2 million on the line. But please, tell me more about your problems. I wiped my tears and nodded. Of course. That's when I made the decision. I'm Thea Winters, 32, and until 6 months ago, I was the senior account specialist at one of the top marketing firms in Chicago. I'd spent 8 years there, working 60-hour weeks, canceling vacation plans, missing my niece's birthday parties. I'd been the one who landed the Arcadian account in the first place. But none of that mattered to Vivienne. Before I go any further with this story, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're watching from? I'm still trying to wrap my head around how far this has traveled. And honestly, knowing there are people listening helps me feel less alone with what happened. I'd always been the reliable one, the fixer. Dad used to call me his little problem solver from the time I was 6 and figured out how to repair his broken fishing reel all by myself. Growing up in a small apartment with just him after Mom left, I learned early how to be resourceful, how to make things work when they seemed broken beyond repair. Maybe that's why I stayed at that company so long, trying to fix a toxic environment that was never going to change. Or maybe I was just scared of starting over. My father had been sick for months. Pancreatic cancer. The doctor had given him 6 months, but he barely made it to 3. I'd been juggling hospital visits and work deadlines, sleeping on uncomfortable chairs in his hospital room with my laptop balanced on my knees. Vivienne knew all this. She just didn't care. We all have personal problems, she'd say whenever I asked for flexibility. She'd smile that cold smile that never reached her eyes. I didn't get where I am by putting family before business. Where she was, by the way, was in an office 3 times the size of anyone else's, wearing designer clothes she'd sometimes forget to remove the tags from so she could return them later. She'd been at the firm for 15 years and had gone through 7 assistants in the past 2 years alone. But she brought in clients, big ones, and in our industry, that was all that mattered to the partners. The day after the funeral, Vivienne kept me until midnight. 16 straight hours. I hadn't showered, hadn't eaten. My phone was filled with concerned texts from relatives still in town for the funeral, wondering where I'd disappeared to. The presentation needs to be perfect, she kept saying, sending me back draft after draft with vague criticisms. This feels flat. This lacks impact. This doesn't reflect our brand ethos. At 11:45 p.m., she finally stood up, stretching like a satisfied cat. Well, I think we've got it. You can go now. I stared at her, my eyes burning from exhaustion and unshed tears. The meeting's at 9 a.m. tomorrow. You want me here at 7 sharp. We need to do a full run-through. She was already packing up her designer bag, not looking at me. Oh, and wear something more professional tomorrow. That outfit looks like you bought it at a discount store. I was wearing the black dress I'd worn to my father's funeral. After she left, I sat in my darkened cubicle for a long time. The cleaning staff moved around me, vacuuming and emptying trash cans. Ramon, the night janitor, placed a cup of vending machine hot chocolate on my desk without saying anything. He'd lost his wife the year before. He understood. That's when I remembered the password. 3 weeks earlier, before Dad's condition had worsened, I'd been the one to set up the secure data room for the Arcadian contract. I'd created the master access credentials that controlled who could view which documents. Standard procedure was to share the administrator password with at least 2 team members. I never did. It had been a crazy day. Dad had been admitted to the hospital again, and I'd set up the data room between frantic calls with doctors. I kept meaning to email the password to Vivienne and Dominic, the account director. But then Dad took a turn for the worse, and it slipped my mind. No one had asked about it because they all had their individual access logins. Only the administrator password could change permissions or add and remove documents. Only I had that power. I took a sip of the hot chocolate Ramon had left. It was lukewarm now, but still sweet. And as I drank it, a plan began to form. The Arcadian Group was our biggest potential client of the year. Their CEO, Marissa Arcadian, was known for her strong stance on work-life balance and company culture. She'd built her tech company on the principle that treated employees meant better business. They'd been featured in business magazines for their progressive policies. Policies that were the complete opposite of how Vivienne operated. What if Marissa knew what kind of company she was really considering hiring? What if she saw behind the polished presentation to the broken people creating it? I opened my laptop again, navigating to the secure data room. I logged in with the administrator password, and then I began to work. I didn't alter any of the official documents. I'm not stupid. But I did create a new folder, labeled Company Culture Overview, Confidential. Inside, I uploaded a document. It contained everything. Screenshots of emails where Vivienne demanded employees cancel medical appointments. The time she made Owen work through his sister's wedding because family events happen all the time, billion-dollar clients don't. The staff turnover rates that were hidden from clients. The discriminatory comments she'd made about Alara's hijab. And my own story, including a photo of the funeral program and time-stamped emails showing Vivienne's demands that I return to work immediately. I set the permissions so this folder would become visible to the Arcadian team at exactly 9:15 a.m. 15 minutes into our presentation, when Vivienne would be hitting her stride, talking about how our company values reflect your values. Then I went home and slept for the first time in days. I arrived at 7 a.m. sharp the next morning, as instructed. Vivienne was already there, pacing, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood floors. Finally, she said, though I wasn't late, we need to rearrange the presentation order. I'll open, then you'll cover slides 4 through 35, then Dominic will close. That wasn't the plan. I was supposed to sit quietly and advance slides while she took credit for my work. You want me to present? I asked, confused. Unless you'd prefer I fire you today instead of next week, she snapped. My blood went cold. What? Vivienne sighed dramatically. Don't act surprised. Your performance has been slipping for months. All these personal issues affecting your work. I've been documenting everything. After this client is secured, we'll be restructuring the team. She smiled thinly. Nothing personal, just business. She was going to fire me. After everything I'd given to this company. After working through my father's illness and death. After last night. I understand, I said quietly. Good. Now get ready. The Arcadian team will be impressed by our unified front. She turned away, dismissing me. I went to my desk and sat down heavily. My plan suddenly seemed childish, petty. This wouldn't just expose Vivienne, it would blow up the whole company. Dozens of people would be affected. People like Ramon and Alara and Owen, who needed their jobs. My finger hovered over my keyboard. I could still log in and remove that folder before anyone saw it. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number. Thea, this is Marissa Arcadian. Got your number from your email signature. I'm running late this morning. Can we push the meeting back to 9:30? Also, I reviewed the materials in the data room last night. Very comprehensive. Looking forward to discussing all aspects of your company culture. She'd already seen it. Everything. My hands started shaking. What had I done? At 9:30, Marissa Arcadian walked into our conference room with 2 members of her team. She was shorter than I expected, with silver-streaked hair cut in a sharp bob and keen eyes that missed nothing. Vivienne was all smiles and firm handshakes. Marissa, wonderful to finally meet in person. We're so excited to share our vision for your brand expansion. Marissa smiled politely. Before we begin, I want to clarify something. My assistant accessed your data room last night to prepare for today, and she found some concerning documents about your internal practices. The room went silent. Vivienne's smile froze on her face. I don't know what you mean, she said carefully. Marissa pulled out her tablet and turned it around. On the screen was the document I'd created, open to a screenshot of Vivienne's email to me the day my father died. Need you back at the office ASAP. Your replacement would be here in a heartbeat if you can't handle both. Perhaps you can explain this approach to employee bereavement? Marissa asked, her voice gentle but her eyes hard. And that's when everything exploded. Vivienne's face went from pale to red in seconds. This is fabricated. A disgruntled employee, clearly. She whipped around to stare at me, realization dawning. You did this. I didn't deny it. I couldn't speak at all. The room was spinning slightly. Regardless of who compiled this information, is it accurate? Marissa asked. Of course not, Vivienne snapped. Thea has been emotionally unstable since her father became ill. She's been making mistakes, missing deadlines. I have copies of the original emails, I finally said, my voice barely audible. And the company's HR records will show the staff turnover rates. Ramon from the cleaning staff can verify I was here until midnight last night, hours after my father's funeral. Dominic, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. Vivienne, perhaps we should discuss this privately before. There's nothing to discuss. Vivienne cut him off. This is a transparent attempt by a failing employee to sabotage a major client relationship before she's terminated. Marissa closed her tablet case with a decisive click. I think we've seen enough. Our company values transparent, ethical leadership and humane treatment of employees. Based on what I've reviewed, your firm's actual practices directly contradict the values you're selling to us. She stood up. We'll be taking our business elsewhere. Vivienne looked like she might actually lunge across the table. You can't make a decision based on unverified allegations from one employee. I've already spoken with 3 former employees this morning to verify these accounts, Marissa replied calmly, including your former assistant who quit last month. She turned to me. Thea, I appreciate your honesty. It couldn't have been easy to compile this information while dealing with your loss. She handed me her business card. When you're ready, I'd like to discuss potential opportunities at our company. We value problem solvers with integrity. And then she walked out, taking $2 million with her. The silence that followed was deafening. Vivienne turned to me, her face contorted with rage. You're done. Security will escort you out. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I should have been terrified, but suddenly, all I felt was relief. And something else. Something that felt strangely like power. That's fine, I said, standing up. My legs were steady now. But before I go, you should know that I'm the only one with the administrator password to the Arcadian data room. The one containing all our proprietary strategy documents and competitive analysis that you spent 3 months creating. Her eyes widened slightly. You'll need that to try to salvage this relationship. Or, at the very least, to ensure our work doesn't leak to competitors. I picked up my bag. So, you have a choice. You can escort me out right now, or you can acknowledge in writing that I'm leaving of my own accord, with a proper severance package and a neutral reference. For the first time since I'd known her, Vivienne Mercer was speechless. Dominic coughed nervously, looking between us. Perhaps we can discuss this reasonably, he said. Thea has been an exemplary employee until recent circumstances. Vivienne's face had gone from red to a bloodless white. You're blackmailing me. I'm negotiating, I corrected her. Something I learned watching you do it for 8 years. Her eyes darted to the conference room door where Marissa Arcadian had just exited. $2 million. Gone. And with it, likely the promotion Vivienne had been chasing for the past year. The partners wouldn't take this lightly. Give me the password, and I'll consider your terms, she finally said. I shook my head. Not how this works. I need the severance agreement in writing first. 3 months' salary, health benefits continued through the end of the year, and a letter confirming I resigned voluntarily for personal reasons. That's extortion. That's standard severance for an 8-year employee who's never received a negative performance review. I tilted my head. Unless you've been falsifying those too? Vivienne's jaw clenched so tight I could almost hear her teeth grinding. Fine, she spat. Dominic, draft the agreement, now. While Dominic worked on the document, Vivienne and I sat in silence. I could feel her staring at me, probably imagining all the ways she'd like to destroy me. I kept my eyes on the window, watching clouds drift across the Chicago skyline. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I never thought you had it in you, she finally said, her voice low. Always so, accommodating, so desperate to please. I looked at her then, really looked at her. The perfect makeup that couldn't quite hide the lines of exhaustion. The designer clothes that were her armor. The tension that never left her shoulders. That's what makes me good at my job, I said simply. I see what people need before they know they need it. And what do I need, Thea? She asked mockingly. Therapy, I replied, and maybe some actual friends. Before she could respond, Dominic returned with the paperwork. I read through it carefully, making a few corrections before signing. As I scrawled my name, I felt 8 years of my life ending. 8 years of missed birthdays and canceled dates and just one more revision before you go nights. 8 years of trying to earn the approval of someone who was incapable of giving it. The password, Vivienne demanded as soon as I set down the pen. I wrote it on a post-it note and slid it across the table. Apology accepted 2023. Her eyes narrowed. Is this some kind of joke? The system requires a capital letter, lowercase letters, and a number, I said innocently. It met all the criteria. I stood up, gathering my few personal items. Good luck with the partners, Vivienne. I'm sure you'll find a way to spin this. As I walked toward the door, she called after me. They'll never believe you over me, I'll make sure of it. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I don't care what they believe anymore. And I realized, with a strange sense of wonder, that it was true. I walked out of that building feeling lighter than I had in years, despite everything. Dad would have been proud. He always told me, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, Thea Bear. It's necessary. For the next week, I slept. I mourned. I ordered takeout and didn't answer my phone. I went through Dad's things and cried over fishing lures and old photographs. I did all the grieving I hadn't been allowed to do. On day 8, I finally listened to my voicemails. 3 were from former coworkers, expressing shock over what had happened. Apparently, Vivienne had told everyone I'd had a mental breakdown and had to be let go. But the company grapevine was buzzing with rumors about the lost Arcadian account. The 4th message was from Marissa Arcadian herself. Thea, I hope you're taking care of yourself. When you're ready, I'd like to discuss a position that's opened up at our company. No rush. Grief takes the time it takes. Call me when you can. I didn't call her right away. Instead, I went to my father's favorite fishing spot on Lake Michigan. I sat on the pier where he'd taught me to bait a hook, where he'd shown me how patience and persistence could bring rewards. I scattered some of his ashes there, watching them disappear into the water he'd loved. I don't know what to do next, Dad, I whispered. A warm breeze brushed my face, and for a moment, I could almost hear his voice. Yes, you do, Thea Bear. You always do. 2 weeks after walking out of my old job, I met Marissa for coffee. She didn't ask about what had happened at my former company. Instead, she asked about my father, about what I loved in marketing, about where I saw myself in 5 years if there were no obstacles in my way. We need someone to head up our community engagement initiatives, she said after listening thoughtfully. Someone who understands people, who can build authentic relationships with our users. The salary is competitive, and we have a strict policy about work-life balance. Why me? I asked. You barely know me. Marissa smiled. I know you stood up for what's right, even when it cost you. I know you're skilled enough that your former boss was willing to present your work as her own. And I know you're grieving a tremendous loss but still found the strength to set boundaries. She sipped her latte. That's exactly the kind of integrity and resilience we need. I started my new job a month later. The difference was, well, it was everything. 9 to 5 hours that actually ended at 5. Coworkers who asked how I was doing and actually waited for the answer. Projects that mattered. A boss who sent me home when I looked tired. I was healing, slowly but surely. And then, 3 months after I left, I got a text from Alara, my former coworker. Thought you'd want to know. Vivienne's gone. Not just demoted. Gone. I called her immediately. What happened? Remember that password you gave her? For the Arcadian data room? Turns out she used the same password for everything afterward, including her work email. Alara's voice was vibrating with barely suppressed glee. She never bothered to change it because, she's Vivienne. And? I prompted, my heart suddenly racing. And last week, someone from IT was doing routine security checks. They logged into her email using that password. Found everything, Thea. Years of manipulated timesheets. Expense reports with personal purchases coded as business expenses. Emails where she took credit for other people's work. Alara paused for dramatic effect. And get this, she'd been secretly negotiating with our biggest competitor, planning to jump ship and take her clients with her. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Are you serious? Deadly. The partners called an emergency meeting yesterday. She was escorted out by security. No severance, no letter of recommendation, nothing. I sat down heavily on my couch. I never expected. What, justice? Alara laughed. Neither did we. But your little password was the key that unlocked it all. Apology accepted indeed. The universe has a sense of humor. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment for a long time. I hadn't intended for this to happen. I'd simply wanted to escape with my dignity intact. But the password I'd chosen in a moment of bitter irony had become the instrument of Vivienne's downfall. The perfect revenge isn't something you plot and execute. It's setting in motion a chain of events that allows someone to destroy themselves with their own worst qualities. Vivienne's arrogance, her belief that rules didn't apply to her, her contempt for basic security protocols, these were what ultimately exposed her. I didn't feel the vindictive satisfaction I might have expected. Instead, I felt a strange sense of closure. The chapter was truly finished now. 6 months after starting at Arcadian, I was thriving. My team had launched a community mentorship program that was getting national attention. I'd made actual friends at work, people I had dinner with, people who checked on me when I had a bad day. And then came the industry awards ceremony. I hadn't planned to attend, but Marissa insisted our whole team go to support our nomination for the mentorship program. It's important to celebrate wins together, she'd said. The banquet hall was filled with marketing professionals from across the region. I was laughing at something my colleague Zane had said when I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. I turned and saw her. Vivienne. She looked different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by something more subdued. The perfect makeup was less severe. But the eyes were the same sharp, calculating, missing nothing. She was standing with a group from a small local agency. From what Alara had told me, she'd struggled to find work after being fired. Her reputation had followed her. The only place that would hire her was a startup with no industry connections, a company too new to have heard the stories. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, deliberately, I raised my champagne glass in her direction, a silent acknowledgement. She stared at me for a long beat before giving a slight nod in return. I turned back to my colleagues, to my new life, leaving Vivienne in my past where she belonged. Later that night, our mentorship program won its category. As I stood on stage with my team, looking out at a room full of industry peers applauding our work done with integrity, with purpose, with humanity, I thought of my dad. See that, Thea Bear? I could almost hear him say, that's what happens when you know your own worth. The truth is, revenge wasn't what healed me. It wasn't what rebuilt my career or restored my confidence. Those came from recognizing my own value, from finding a place where I could contribute without sacrificing my humanity, from honoring my grief instead of burying it under spreadsheets and client presentations. The greatest revenge wasn't exposing Vivienne or causing her downfall. It was living well thriving, actually, after she tried to break me. 3 years have passed since that funeral day when I stood in Vivienne's office, mascara streaking down my face, begging for basic human compassion. 3 years since I discovered just how strong I really am. I still visit Dad's fishing spot on his birthday. I still miss him every day. But the sharp edges of grief have softened, and in its place has grown something unexpected: gratitude. I'm grateful for the breaking point that forced me to stand up for myself. Grateful for Marissa seeing potential in me when I could barely see it myself. Grateful even for Vivienne, whose cruelty ultimately freed me from a life of silent compliance. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the catalysts for the best ones. Sometimes we need to be shattered before we can rebuild ourselves, stronger and truer than before. If you're watching this and you're in a place where someone is diminishing you, where your worth is questioned daily, where your humanity is secondary to your productivity, please know that there is life on the other side. There are workplaces where you're valued. There are people who will see your light even when others try to dim it. And if you've already walked away from something toxic, if you've already taken that terrifying leap into the unknown, I see you. I'm proud of you. Your courage matters. If this story resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button so others might find it too. Leave a comment about your own experience. I read every single one. And subscribe if you want to hear more stories about finding strength in unexpected places, because that's what we're all doing, isn't it? Finding our way back to ourselves, one brave decision at a time. Remember, the most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to break you isn't to break them in return. It's to piece yourself back together, stronger than before, and live a life so full and authentic that their absence becomes a blessing. That's not just revenge, that's redemption.